Hello, my name is Maria Helena Carey, and I run a blog called The Hill is Home. And I am here with Julie. Julie, would you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name is Lee Aronson. I'm the Executive Director of CHAMPS, the Capitol Hill Chamber of Commerce. We advocate, connect, and promote our Capitol Hill small businesses.
Okay, and today we have the pleasure of talking to Marcus Goodwin. Marcus, would you please introduce yourself?
Hello, my name is Marcus Goodwin. I'm a candidate for DC Council at Large. I'm a DC native. I have experience in housing and economic development to make DC a better place. I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Thank you so much. So we are going to each ask 3 questions, and we're just going to go ahead and get started. My first question is, in such a crowded field of candidates, as there are 25 candidates for the at-large position, how do you plan on standing out? Do so many candidates in the at-large race give better known names, or maybe people who are returning an unfair advantage in this field?
Thank you so much. Again, I'm a DC native, working to make DC a more equitable city, bridging our wealth gap, and I have professional experience in building affordable housing and economic development projects that makes me uniquely qualified. While the field has a lot of lifelong politicos or professional politicians or lobbyists, I'm someone who comes in with a different perspective, because the challenge of recovering from COVID-19 is going to require knowledgeable, passionate, understanding leadership to help get our small business owners back on track, to get our jobs back to where they were, and ensure that we can fund our great human services and capital programs that makes us a fair and equitable city for all. We're not in a position to do so, and it's not going to require the same political thinking that's been in and out of the Wilson building for decades. We require new ideas, new leadership, and a millennial with economic development experience provides the kind of dynamic change that we need.
Okay, thank you for your answer. Moving on, each ward council office handles constituent services inside of their geographical area, but the at-large offices handle all of DC. How are you going to endeavor that the at-large office is seen as more than just a backup for citizens when they're having a hard time getting results from their ward council member? And overall, how would you raise the profile of the office of the at-large council member to help and benefit all Washingtonians?
I really tie back to my personal story, and I'm really a man of the city because I was raised primarily by my mother in Columbia Heights in Ward 1, but also by my father in Congress Heights in Ward 8. And now I'm a Ward 4 homeowner who spent most of his educational career in Ward 3 with 7 siblings who live all around the city. When I go to community meetings, the first thing I ask is, when's the last time you saw your at-large members? And by and large, most of these groups have never even seen a majority of the at-large members, and specific members in particular are never seen in communities. I'm in Ward 8 on a very consistent basis, not just because of my family, but because the task that we're endeavoring on demands that. And when there's a crime, a tragedy in community, I'm there to support and agree that the at-large members should be supplemental to the ward members, because one office can effectively represent on a consistent basis 80,000 some odd residents. So I want to ensure that I'm taking my personal narrative and experience being in the city, being in communities, and applying it to ensure that not only do we provide adequate constituent services at the ward level, but we advocate for issues that go to a deeper, more systemic level, solving the root causes of community issues before they manifest and we're dealing with the symptoms. That's for education, that's for violent crime, especially homicides, which have gone up in the district, and for regular city services that have not been consistently rendered across wards. So I believe that our office really serves as an opportunity for us to step up and provide supplemental assistance, because we can't just rely or push off the duty to the ward members.
Okay, I'm now going to turn it over to Julie.
Marcus, thank you for being with us today. I have several business-focused questions. The first is that a common concern of our CHAMPS members is that it's hard to do business in DC. Licensing is hard, the bureaucracy is slow, and the agency databases don't speak to each other. And many small business owners had to spend a number of hours navigating that bureaucracy. Some of them say that they never would have been able to start a small business if they hadn't had a partner with a full-time job. And this hurts prospective small business owners who may not be well resourced. How would you use your position on the council to make sure that small business ownership is easier and more accessible in the district?
Thank you for the question. As someone who's worked in small business, local business, I've dealt with many of the city agencies and felt a lot of the same frustrations that you're talking about. The first thing that I would focus on is breaking up DCRA, our Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs, which oversees the permitting and process for ensuring that you're compliant with our laws and have every available resource to start your business, is incredibly complex and unwieldy. And most people have to pay permit expediters just to get through the system. So the fact that the way it's structured is so big and bureaucratic that you can't even do it yourself, even if you're patient, competent, and experienced, means that there needs to be a different solution from the governmental structure. So I would create agencies dealing with different industries to make business ownership smoother. In terms of running a business and seeing margins thin, many people, restaurant, bar, entertainment venues, especially that require an in-person experience or create a special in-person experience that have us have dynamic communities, are really hurt because they can't use their space, especially their indoor space. And now seeing with revenues off, sometimes up to 75% for these businesses, I want the city to pass a one-year tax abatement that would be a pass-through for landlords to their tenants to ensure that they can stay in place. We're at risk of having half of our restaurants and bars in the city closed in the next 12 months. If we want to stay the same dynamic, diverse city that we've been over the long period of time, we need to ensure that we start to step up and support our entrepreneurs that are providing jobs and creating really beautiful, dynamic communities with the special experiences that they deliver. And the final point is that I would create a tax increment financing program that would provide upfront capital for small business owners to be property owners. In many cases, people are renters for 10-year leases with 2 5-year extensions. And at the end of it, or even in between, the rent continues to go up. Ownership allows them to build equity and control their fate a lot better. And instead of passing these big $100 million tax increment financing deals, I think the city should focus their energy and their resources on smaller deals to allow entrepreneurs to go from renters to owners. Those are the ways that I would help address our economic development crisis now.
Great, thank you so much. That was going into my second question about the dramatic drop that we've seen for some of the sales revenue for a number of our small businesses. Could you speak a little bit more about the abatement program that you just mentioned, if you had a few specifics that you could put in there about that?
Yeah, I want our entrepreneurs to find or have the ability to find commercial property that they can buy themselves. While it's a very capital intensive thing to do, in addition to the cost of building up, designing, making tenant improvements on your property, it's also incredibly expensive to buy land in the district. So I want to help them be at a point where they could find and source commercial property before moving in, but also when they're a tenant, they need to have the capital capability to buy. I think we probably know a few businesses were unable to stay in DuPont because a new landlord had taken over and purchased the building they were in. Buffalo Billiards was one, Front Page was another. They're incredibly important, just district institutions that were unable to buy their property, and a new landlord wanted to just, I think, effectively move them out. So they weren't able to stay in their space because they weren't able to afford the new rents. with a landlord seeking a new opportunity to get a higher paying person in. If we had this tax increment financing in place, they'd be able to get the solid upfront capital to buy or condominiumize their space, buy it out, and then be their own controllers of their fate and destiny as a business owner. Whereas that's not the case right now. And a lot of businesses that have contributed a lot to the district over the years with great experiences, great food, great employment, great community are just not allowed to stay. So I'd like to find creative new fixes that tap into our economic development potential to solve those problems.
Great, thank you. My last question is about residential and commercial parking on Capitol Hill and really across the district. How we balance parking among residents, customers, employers, and employees is kind of an age-old question here in DC. Where there's parking in high demand, employees and DC service providers just have to absorb those parking tickets that they receive as a cost of doing business. How would you approach this problem?
You know, many cities have struggled with parking. I like the example of what Miami has done, and they've repurposed vacant property to be lots around the city to have a municipal parking structure, which we don't have at all in the district. We should have city-owned lots at key and critical points that are under or unutilized land that could really be built efficiently, vertically, at low cost, and would pay for itself and help ameliorate a lot of the commercial or in and out of town driving demands that are incredibly high in the district. We have over 50% of our workforce who aren't district residents. So we need to ensure that they have a place to park that doesn't impede upon our local residents, that doesn't hurt the commercial viability of our businesses or helps the commercial viability of our businesses. While it's very important for us to build more bike infrastructure, bike is not a reasonable means of commuting for many people because they're coming in from so far, so they're gonna continue to bring their cars. So I think as much as possible, encouraging local employment will reduce the demand, creating as many residential zones, exclusively residential zones as possible. But the city itself, creating parking structures will be incredibly important. And I harken back to Miami because their parking garages are beautiful. You have even no idea because they're so beautifully green and planted and landscaped and manicured that it just looks like a greenhouse on the outside. So I think there are some creative solutions that we can take on that help our commercial business owners continue to get people in and out as efficiently or as attractively as possible. Because a lot of the economic development that isn't happening east of the river can directly be attributed to how hard it is to access these spaces. And I want to help us, you know, both for walkers, bikers, and cars, create a nice, healthy mix and balance.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, our last question is, what would you name the regional football team? Not just the Washington football team, hopefully. And do you support a return to RFK for the football team?
Yeah, I would say that I really have thought about this and have surveyed my Facebook audience.
Okay.
And then one thing that people really like, or a name that's really emerged to be popular, is the Red Tails.
Yes.
It's a nod, an homage to the Tuskegee Airmen who painted the tails of their planes red to uniquely identify themselves, which many airmen across our military have done in terms of interesting, unique paint jobs. I think that would be an effective, honorable way to point toward our tremendous African-American history and culture in the district, because African-Americans have contributed so much socially, culturally, economically, and we have supported both on and off the field our football franchise, which is the most popular sport in the United States. So I think that that would be my preferred option, but frankly, I'm a man of the people, so let's take it up to vote. As long as it isn't, you know, something silly that comes out of it, I think that that would be probably the best, most democratic way to go about it. And I really do want to see the team back in the city. I'm not young enough that I don't remember being able to go to a game in the city, but it can't just be a football stadium. That's very clear. It should be a community center. It should be a place for concerts. It should be a place for young people to engage in free activity that's really, you know, productive to them and building their love and their passion for being able to move about the city. If we can create a really comprehensive, with a lot of community input, programmatic vision for the future, that's something that we should seek to have on that RFK site. But I'm happy with football being one of the many things that would be there, but I don't think we should have to pay for it. We just had the Los Angeles Rams owner paid $1 billion out of his own pocket to build their stadium in Los Angeles. And it's beautiful. It should be opening this fall, but it's just beautiful from what I've seen come out of it.
Oh, wow.
It would be a great economic driver to the city to have them back in town. So
Okay,
that's
well,
what I want to see.
great. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and to Julie. And we will go ahead and share your links. But if people want to learn more about your campaign or reach out to you, how should they go ahead and do that?
Yeah, my social media is at Goodwin for DC. That's GOODWINFORDC. That's Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My website is the same, goodwinfordc.com. I'm happy to stay in touch with people. Send me a direct message, follow, like, share, and I'd love to be in touch with people because I think we built a strong social media presence that's going to drive and ensure that this millennial vision for a fair and equitable city is one that the city embraces and takes us forward as a council and as a city.
Okay. Well, thank you again so very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.